So I'm here with John Riddle, the nephew of Carl Riddle, from the Riddle House in South Florida at the Yesteryear Village. So happy to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
And so tell us a little bit about your life, your history.
Okay, I myself was born in 1931 in West Palm Beach. But
So you're a native.
I'm a native.
Yeah,
yes.
that's awesome. So am
But my father and my uncle were twins, and they were living in Kansas. And my father got an opportunity. Well, he went to the first convention for building planners for a town, town managers. And so West Palm Beach was advertising for a manager at that time, for their first one. So he applied and they accepted him, but he couldn't go at that time. He was up in Xenia, Ohio as the city manager, and he couldn't, his business would let him go away. So he sent his twin brother.
Carl.
Sent Carl down here, and I don't know whether they told him the truth or not, but anyway, they hired him. And so his first residence was the Riddle House, which was called the City House.
Okay.
It was owned by the city of West Palm Beach. It was across the street from Woodlawn Cemetery. And the person who lived in that building was also the superintendent of the cemetery. So he was that and the city manager at the same time. So this was in the early 20s. And he had some incidents there, but nothing really exciting. I know that in my aunt's diary, her name was Louise, she said in the evening that the stairs creaked so bad it sounded like someone carrying a chain.
See, I heard there were reports of chains up and down the stairs, and I didn't know where that came from.
That's in her diary.
That's where that came from, okay.
And they couldn't keep any hired help in the building at night. They would just leave. That was it. So then the other thing in my uncle's diary is where Joseph appears. And of course he's very famous for having hung himself in the attic.
Right, and so he's the one that was very broke and very depressed?
He came as a kind of an itinerant. He was looking for work. And even though this was in the middle of West Palm Beach at that time, my uncle had horses and cows and chickens and all that.
A regular farm,
Farm. So this guy came to help with that and cut wood for the stove and so forth. So he was doing all right, evidently, and he did have a family. But it's kind of hazy in the diary, and then there's of course family tradition that's been handed down too. So, but anyway, the gist of the thing is that he became depressed, was having problems with her financial whatever, or domestic. And got depressed and hung himself in the attic. So.
And I heard they actually removed the beam that he hung himself on.
It burned.
It burned.
The building caught on fire several years later, and you can still see charred rafters.
That's what I heard. I heard that, yes.
Yeah. And so the original has been removed, but there's another one there, and some of the other rafters have been replaced. But you can see charred rafters up there still from the fire.
How did the fire start? Do we know?
From the stove.
From the stove.
Yeah, there was a stove and a fireplace in the kitchen, and then above that was a bedroom that had also a fireplace in it from the same chimney, and then straight above that in the attic is where it caught on fire.
Okay.
So it had to be from that. When we moved the house, we had to take the chimney down. Of course, it was brick. And we decided not to replace it, so it's not there now, but you could see it in the original pictures. And so anyway, after it burned, they had to repair it and so forth. And my uncle, I think, lived there until maybe 1926.
And I heard that the activity in the house really amped up after Joseph's death.
Yes. Again, tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't in the diary. But since it's been moved here, I know that there are stories of a woman in the kitchen and a child And so I've been researching the diaries and so forth, and I noticed that my father and mother were married in 1916.
Wow.
And then about 11 months later, they had my sister, who was 14 years older than I was. But my father went back east. They were living in Kansas. He went back to Illinois or Ohio somewhere for business. And he was at the train station, and there was a German woman there with 6 kids who was giving her kids away.
Oh my gosh.
This was, of course, in 1917.
Right.
And
Wow.
their name was Fritz. So there was a cute little girl, about 6 years old, and this was in September 29th, 1917.
Oh my gosh, so today.
They made a deal on October 1st. Yeah.
Wow.
September 29th.
Wow. Oh my
So
goodness.
he made a deal with the woman, and October 1st he went back and got the child.
The little girl.
And it was really interesting. She had a big pink bow on her head. Well, years and years later, when she was probably in her 70s or 80s, I found that crazy bow.
Oh my
My mother had
goodness.
kept it. So I sent it to her.
Oh, that's
she was so
awesome.
excited
Oh my
to get the bow back. But anyway, and then my first sister was born, just before this. So I don't know whether they were thinking about having, her name was Mary.
Right.
Mary as a babysitter, or he just felt so sorry for this woman that he took the child. And so I know that we've had several encounters in the kitchen with a Mary.
Mm-hmm.
So she would have been probably 15 or 16. There's a picture of her in the group picture over in the Riddle house. And she liked to help in the kitchen. That was in the diary somewhere. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe Mary is my stepsister.
Yes.
Now the other thing is...
And they got her on September 29th.
Yeah, that's September 29th.
Isn't that amazing? Today.
101 years ago.
101 years ago. They adopted her.
Oh my
So-
God.
I know.
So
That's
I know.
the child
I have goosebumps.
has disturbed me for some time. That
Right,
it's
because
seen
there's a lot of
and heard.
reports of a
lot of
child
reports of a
upstairs.
child.
Yes.
The only connection I can think of is my aunt had a stillborn boy.
And it's a boy that
It's a
my,
boy,
yes,
yeah.
the
So
spirit medium
whether
we
there's a
brought with us.
connection there or not, I don't
sensed a
know.
boy. Yeah.
But we'll find out.
And last night, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but last night, in one of our groups for the investigation, we had a young boy who was 8 years old. And he's gifted. He has a lot of gifts, and he sensed spirits in the house. His parents were with him. He wanted to go upstairs. The minute he came in the house, he wanted to go upstairs. So we went upstairs with him, and he went right into the room where the little tea set is. And he stood right by that table, and he said he could hear people talking to him. And he said that there was a child with him, and we asked him what the child's name was. We said, ask what his name is, because he said it was a boy. Of course, he said he thought he heard Jake, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And then we said, well, maybe we can get a picture of you and Jake. And so he put his arm out, and he said, come, let's take a picture. And some of the women took a picture of him. And in one of the pictures that the woman shot, there was a large ball of light.
Yeah, orb.
Mhm,
Yeah.
right
We've
by
had a
him.
lot of orb pictures taken.
So
Yeah.
he definitely
Interesting.
sensed a boy up there as well.
That's very
So and usually children will interact with children. So I found that really interesting too.
Well, I worked here managing this village for years, and while I was here, there was a paranormal convention, I guess you'll call it, down in Miami,
Mm-hmm.
and 3 or 4 people heard about the village,
Yes.
so they came up here, and they went through the village, and they saw quite a bit of stuff. But on the Riddle porch, they saw people dancing. And back around the corner of the porch, on the west side, they saw some gentlemen playing cards at a table. which was
It's
interesting.
going to be good to remember for tonight because I have a deck of cards with me.
Yeah, okay,
We
good.
use cards.
We use a lot of trigger
cigars,
objects.
whiskey,
Yeah.
poker.
And then there were other instances in other buildings. You want to hear about that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. We have a building called the L Street House. It's a rectangular building that came from Lake Worth. And they're called shotgun houses because
Yes.
you could open the
I
front
know
door
exactly what
and
you're
go right
talking
the
about.
back.
Yes.
Anyway, they when this group went over there, they saw a woman peeking out the curtains and looking out. And actually what they had done was they each wrote down what they saw, the four of them.
Wow.
And then they compared notes afterwards.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of them
Was the same.
died, yeah. But anyway, they saw a woman looking out the curtain, and they said that this was a woman whose husband had gone to town, and he was a gambler, and she was concerned about him.
Wow.
And they went to the town of Lucerne, and I thought, wow, that's really strange, because these four people weren't even from Florida, they came from somewhere else. And the town south of us, Lake Worth, was called Lucerne back in the early days. So she was holding a baby, and the baby was crying. So when I used to take the 3rd and 4th grade kids around on
Yes.
tours, 30 of them at a time, you know how rambunctious they are.
Oh, yes, I
Nobody's
do.
ever quiet. So I would tell them a little bit of that story without frightening them or anything, and tell them, let's go into the back room was a sleeping porch. I said, let's go back there and see if we can hear the baby crying. Well, they would get quiet. You could hear a pin drop. I couldn't believe it. And every time somebody heard a baby cry,
Wow.
I'll guarantee you they were going to hear a baby
Children
cry.
love their ghost stories.
Yes, they do.
They do.
They do.
We say that all the time. We're both librarians, and out of all the books in our library that are checked out the most, the kids come in and say, "Where are the ghost stories? Where are the scary books?" But they want.
They want the
They want the real deal.
non-fiction
Yeah.
books. They don't want
Yeah.
the fiction. The little
No.
the little guys want to read about true ghost stories.
Yeah.
And then as they get older, they go into more fictional ghost stories.
Right.
But yeah, it's amazing. Kids
It
are
is.
connected to spirit.
Then we had another building across the street from here that was called the Civil War building, actually. And the guy that managed, I had a volunteer managing each building, and then he had a committee of his own. But he was a Civil War reenactor,
Oh, yes.
a sergeant.
Mhm.
His name was David Rose, and he had had several incidents in that building, and he's the one that went down and got these people from Miami and brought them up. But the occasions he had in there was he had a huge American flag in the back of the building, which was a divider, so that he could change clothes and dress back there and have coffee and stuff like that. And it was on, he cut grommets all the way across, about a dozen of them in this flag, and hung it on cup hooks. And he went in there one day, and the whole thing was on the ground. For it to come down,
That's like almost
it's gotta
impossible.
be picked up.
Yeah,
and put
exactly.
down. Even one person can,
Wow.
you've got to be there at the same time. So that was disturbing to him. And then some guy donated what they call a ship's clock. It was a brass clock about 6 inches across. And he carefully put nails in the wall and everything and nailed that up there where he
Wow.
would never fall
Never
down.
fall.
He came in one morning and that thing was laying flat on the ground.
Not broken, probably.
Not broken.
Wow.
It was face down. He picked it up, and he was terrified because this guy had loaned it. It was a prized possession of his. Then he was there one day working on a weekend, and he heard crying in the front of the building. He looked out, and there was nobody there. He came back. He heard it again, and finally a lady who was working in the building next to him came over and he said, "Are you having problems with your children?" He says, "Well, I don't have any children here." And she said, "Well, I can hear crying." He says, "I can too, but I don't see anything." So that's when he got excited and went down and got this group of paranormal people when he heard they were in Miami. And they came up and they said that there was 2 little girls standing outside and that they had seen a man who was wounded for some reason or another, for
Wow.
war or whatever. And he was lying on the floor, and they were crying about that. So he used that in his presentation from then on too.
Absolutely.
And weirdly enough, where they said that they had fallen, there's a grease spot down there.
Oh
on the
my
floor.
gosh.
And it's still there. It's the Pineapple building
Okay.
now.
Absolutely.
And that spot's still on the floor. We couldn't get it up.
Oh my gosh. And then after you saved the house in 1980, right? I heard when they were doing the restoration, a lot of the workers that,
We had some problems.
yeah.
Lumber flying across the room
Heard
and
about
stuff like that.
And then I
So
heard they would come back and their tools would have been moved.
everything
and
was moved. Ladders were knocked over. Everything.
windows were broken.
Yeah, but nobody was ever hurt.
No, that's what I heard. There were no
Heard.
reports of anyone.
And they seemed to be more active toward the men than the women
Yeah,
for some
that
reason.
too.
However, women have had their hair pulled and stuff in the building. So, and of course the usual cold spots.
Yeah, we had some
Middle of the
spots
summer.
last night. Yeah, exactly. It was like 92 degrees
Pretty
last night, and
nice,
we were
huh?
having cold spots, and
Yeah.
we had a very interesting incident last night in the, I guess you would say, the sitting room, right as you walk into the house to the left. We were sitting on the floor, and you know they have those room darkening pull down shades.
Yes.
And so pretty much with those shades, if you yank on them, they snap straight back up. Or you can pull them down to whatever position you want them. And we had them all the way down. And as we were sitting there talking, the shade started to climb slowly up, which is really, I don't see how possible, because to get it to come up, it would just snap up.
Yeah.
And so it climbed up slowly, and we were all watching it. And then 2 shades over, it started to do the same thing. And then the one by the front door started to do the same thing. Absolutely no reasonable
They're playing
explanation
with
for that. Absolutely. And we felt that too, and that was with the group that we had the young boy in.
Yeah.
So we felt very much like they were playing.
There could be any number of ghosts in there because funerals were held in that room.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
interesting.
That was like the room where they would have the people come in.
And then in the front door, we had a little bell that as you opened the door, the bell
would ring. Uh-huh.
So that the volunteers would know somebody had entered the building. And that used to ring just
All the time
all
with no
the
one
time
coming in.
sometimes. No breeze, no nothing around. It was just ringing.
Wow.
And every time you go over to look at it, it would stop. So, and then we have the lady in a white costume who wanders around the village at night.
Period dress.
Period dress with a Afghan. Several times she had a big Afghan
Oh,
doll.
okay.
And mostly seen around the church. And as you approached this apparition, it would go around a corner most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But occasionally people reported that it just disappeared. And it never touched the ground. And it was interesting. After I left here, I became a security officer at a gated community. And we had a patrol that would go around in the car at night. And the community was still under construction. So there was areas that were unoccupied, but the roads were there and everything. But he had to patrol back in there. This guy was patrolling. I never mentioned anything about
Right.
the woman here. He was patrolling back in there, and he saw a woman walking down the walk in this deserted part of the development with a white dog. And so he was, through his headlights, he drove over to it, and it disappeared.
That.
Well, he was really shook up.
Yeah.
So after that, I told him the story of this. He felt a little better. At least it's
A little bit better. At
been
least it
seen
made sense,
before.
right? He's not totally crazy,
Not
right?
completely crazy, so he'll be all right.
Well, I'll tell you, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have this beautiful piece of history here, because you are solely credited with saving it. So
We worked hard on it. I was here only the school was here when I first came.
that's what we heard. That was the first building brought in.
And then from there, the Corbett Shack, which is a tin shack back in the back, which was a hunter cabin. I knew about it out in an area west of here called J.W. Corbett Wildlife Area. And so we made arrangements to move it. We just completely dismantled it. And the fair manager at the time, we came in with all this sheets of metal and
And they said, "What are you doing?"
termite infested boards and everything. And the manager said, "You're not putting that up in that village." I said, "Yeah, we are. This is part of Florida history." So it's one of the most popular events to be seen. And
That's
they have their own ghost over there.
Oh, they do?
Oh, they do. Yeah, there was a guy that they always cook around a fire there. They used to give samples to the people, but the health department stopped them. But anyway, they still cook just so you can get the smells and everything. And this old guy would cook. He had a wonderful time over there. He was probably in his 80s. Well, he passed away, and someone was taking a picture of a lizard.
One of those big giant ones that we've been seeing?
Like the Geico ad.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the background at the corner of that building, he stands.
Oh my
right there.
gosh.
And the land goes down in the back of this place, of this building. And where he was standing, he wouldn't have been able to get to the height he was standing on the ground. So he's just
He's
sort of up in the
suspended,
air. And
yeah.
they've got this picture. I got it on my
Oh.
thing. And actually, when Ghost Adventure people came back from the Travel Channel,
Right.
they did a section on that too, but I never saw it. So
That's so
that was
interesting.
interesting.
So interesting.
So there's stuff going on in here. If you want to come spend the night, I guess
We do.
you'll
We
enjoy
do.
it.
We definitely do want to come spend the night. And I'll tell you, we are very big into history and preserving history, which is why we're here this weekend, because anything we can do to help raise funds to help them to preserve
Wonderful.
this place.
Great, yeah. Well, we can always use that.
I know. And thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome.
That's so awesome to hear these stories.
Yeah. Thank you so
Yeah.
I'm
much.
sure there's more, but I can't think of it right now.
That's okay.
After all, 87, come on.